Hi folks, this is Tara the Homestead Hopeful, and today I want to talk about a subject that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is prepping on a budget. You may have seen some of those prepper channels where they're advertising things like off-grid stoves that cost $1,000, or a neat folding saw that can fit in your bug-out bag but costs more than your electric bill. Now, I'm not knocking those channels. I love those kinds of channels, and if you can afford that kind of equipment, that's wonderful. But not all of us have those big budgets. Some of us, in fact, have very little. And if you're barely affording to eat as it is, you may think you can't possibly prep. But I'm going to show you a few items that you can start buying on practically any budget. And at the end, I'm going to let you know about a little way you can build up your food stockpile without spending one red cent. So stay tuned for that. Alright, let's move on to the 10 budget-friendly prepping items you can afford on almost any budget. Number 1. Water. To borrow a quote from one of my favorite YouTube channels, Plant-Based Homestead Prepper, water, water, water. Water is one of the most essential elements for human survival, but it's honestly one of the prepping items that most people overlook. A lot of people seem to think it'll just magically continue to flow from the taps even if a disaster happens, and that it'll always be clean and drinkable. The thing is, that's just not true. All kinds of things can compromise your city water supply or even your well water or local water source. If the electricity goes down in a widespread area near you, the pumps that bring the water to your home may not work. If a pipe bursts, your water could be contaminated. You don't want to risk your water source being jeopardized and having nothing to fall back on. So the first thing you should do is buy at least 1 gallon of water every time you go to the store. Gallons of water are usually around $1, although they can be a little less than that in some stores, possibly a little more. Don't buy water in individual bottles because it costs several times more for the same amount of liquid. Just stick to the gallons, or if you can afford it, buy the larger 3 or 5 gallon containers of water. You can also save your empty jugs and bottles from things like milk, juice, sodas, other liquids to store water for cleaning. Wash them out well and then store tap water in them. Just be sure to label them not for drinking so that you make sure your family knows it's not sterile water. In a pinch, you could probably still use this water for drinking and cooking as long as you purify it first, but at the very least you'll have it for washing dishes, washing clothes, hands, etc. Later, you'll want to add stuff like water purification tablets or water filters to your prep, but when you're on a budget, simply stocking up on water is a really good place to start. Number 2, ramen noodles. Okay, so ramen noodles aren't exactly the healthiest food on the planet, but we're saving food in case of an emergency here, so we can overlook that little fact for now, especially since we're working on a strict budget. Plus, you can make them healthier by throwing out the high sodium seasoning pack and just adding some vegetables to them instead. Ramen is typically in the neighborhood of about 20 to 25 cents a pack for the basic stuff, up to about $1 a pack for the better quality ramen. They make fancy ramen too, but it's too rich for our budget blood, so let's just stick to the cheaper stuff. If your budget is $1, you should be able to get 4 or 5 packs. If you can spare a couple of bucks, you can pick up a 12 pack at a store like Aldi, and you can even get a 48 pack of the chicken flavor for around $8 at Sam's Club, at least in my area. A single pack of the average ramen noodles contains nearly 400 calories, making it a good choice for when every calorie counts. Now, ramen noodles aren't going to stay good for several years, so I really only recommend prepping them if your family likes them and will eat them. That way you can rotate them into your normal diet. But since they're quite inexpensive, they're a good item to have even if you end up tossing some out one day. Although, ideally you don't want to waste food if you can help it. Another cool thing to note is that you can actually eat ramen noodles raw. In a lot of Asian countries, dry ramen noodles are a common snack. You can just crush them up and sprinkle the seasoning packet on for a crunchy treat that you might be missing if the crap hits the fan. Number 3, peanut butter. Peanut butter is one of the most calorie-dense foods you can store. Now, it's not going to last indefinitely on your shelf. Because it's high in fat, the oils inside it will eventually go rancid and start smelling and tasting unpleasant. And if you've ever been into a stale nut, you know what I'm talking about. It's not good. That said, even rancid peanut butter is typically still edible, though I certainly wouldn't want to test that theory unless I were truly starving. Peanut butter contains an average of 188 calories in just 2 tablespoons and contains 8 grams of protein in that 2 tablespoon serving. My local Walmart has huge 64-ounce jars of their Great Value brand peanut butter for about $4, so one jar will fit into most budgets. If you can't manage that much all at once, most Dollar Trees have small jars for just $1. Just a side note, if you have someone with a peanut allergy in your home, I don't advise stocking this one. Even if they don't plan to eat it, there's a small chance it could end up contaminating other food, and a bad situation could be made much worse if someone has a severe allergic reaction and there's no 911 to depend on. Number 4, rice. Rice is on pretty much every single prepping video there is, at least when it comes to food. That's because it's cheap, it's filling, and it can be stored for long periods of time. I don't advise buying brown rice for prepping because not only is it more expensive than white rice, it also contains fats that can go rancid, so it won't store nearly as long as other varieties. Any variety of rice other than brown is fine, although plain white rice is almost always going to be the cheapest option. I do recommend parboiled rice if you can afford it. It's not that much more expensive than plain white rice, and it's been processed to retain a lot of the nutrients that are typically lost when brown rice is processed into white. So it's better for you, and it has a taste and texture a lot more like white rice. My favorite types of rice are jasmine rice, which tastes a lot like buttery popcorn, and sticky rice, which has a really nice chewy texture. Number 5, Knorr sides. Knorr brand sides are one of my personal favorite prepping items. They're only about $1 each and provide 2 generous portions of rice or pasta with flavoring included. They taste pretty darn good for packaged food, and if you add some canned or dehydrated veggies or protein, you can make a complete meal out of them. Since they're dry, they're really light in a bug-out bag too, and they only take about 10 minutes to prepare. Keep in mind that the creamy varieties do taste better when made with milk or butter, so be sure you prep some dry milk and ghee or canned butter if you really enjoy the creamy types. My family's favorites so far are the broccoli cheese pasta and the Spanish rice. We like the Spanish rice topped with cheese, sour cream, and green onion, and although those might not be available if crab hits the fan, it's still really good without the additions. Number 6, tomato paste. Tomato paste is a really good prep because the cans take a lot less space than tomato sauce or tomato juice, and you can add water to the paste to make either sauce or juice. Tomato paste can be used to make pizza, pasta sauce, tomato-based soups, homemade ketchup, salad dressing. It's just super useful. You can also thin it down slightly with water and pour it into those fruit leather trays, so you can dehydrate it in any dehydrator, then just put it into a food processor and turn it into tomato powder. This can be stored long term, especially if you store it in Mylar bags or canning jars with oxygen absorbers. I get small cans of tomato paste at Aldi for only 45 cents each. Remember though, tomato products are acidic, so they don't store very well long term. Try to rotate your stock and use them up within a year or so. Number 7, bouillon. Prepper foods can definitely get a little boring after eating them for a while, so I definitely recommend stocking up on flavorings that can make other foods taste better. I personally stock up on Knorr bouillon powder. You can find huge jars of it at Walmart for around $4, and one jar will last you for a long, long time. I buy the beef, chicken, and the tomato chicken flavors. I use them to flavor all kinds of things like soups, stews, gravies, rice. I even sprinkle the tomato chicken flavor on popcorn sometimes. You can also stock cubes if you prefer. I like the Tones brand cubes from Sam's, but one thing to keep in mind is that they will eventually absorb moisture from the air once you open them and start to get crumbly. It doesn't affect the flavor, and the powder can absorb moisture too, but it makes the cubes difficult to open without them crumbling all over the place, so I mainly stock the powder. It's just easier to use than the cubes. Number 8, lentils. Lentils are a great source of protein, are relatively affordable, and take less water and a lot less time and energy to cook. While pinto beans and many other types of dried beans can take several hours to cook and often need to be soaked before cooking, lentils only take about 15 to 20 minutes. This means if the power is out, you use a lot less of your precious cooking fuel, whether that fuel is fuel cells, wood, or some other fuel source. If you have trouble digesting beans and have gassiness when you eat them, or if you don't like the taste of them, try lentils. They have a relatively mild flavor and don't tend to cause stomach issues for people as much as other types of beans do. You can reduce any potential stomach issues by sprouting them or soaking them before you cook them, but this is not necessary if you don't have any reactions. Number 9, alcohol. Okay, while storing alcohol for drinking or bartering might be wise, it's not what I would consider a budget prep. It's kind of pricey, actually. So what I'm speaking of is rubbing alcohol, the type you use for sanitizing and first aid. Rubbing alcohol is a literal lifesaver. It can sanitize food prep surfaces and dishes when water's not plentiful. It can also keep a minor cut from turning into a raging infection that could turn deadly. A bottle of rubbing alcohol is only about $2 or $3, and considering how absolutely invaluable it can be in a survival situation, it's totally worth it. Number 10, baby wipes. Baby wipes are another very valuable prep item. They can be used for basic sanitation, personal hygiene when you can't take a bath or shower, wiping your hands when they get messy, and they can even be used as toilet paper. In fact, I stock baby wipes instead of a ton of toilet paper because I can store thousands of wipes in a much smaller area than a bunch of toilet paper, and they'll get you a lot cleaner than toilet paper too. As long as they're sealed, they'll stay wet for a long time. I still have an open bag of baby wipes from over 2 years ago, and they still got about 50% of their moisture. I use them now and then for quick wiping down stuff. If they do dry out, just add a little bit of water and you're good to go. If you shop generic, watch for sales, and use coupons, you can get really good deals on baby wipes. That does it for our 10 budget-friendly prepping items. Remember, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and an overflowing pantry begins with a single prep. If you've stayed tuned this long, you might be ready to hear my tip for getting free food for your stash without spending a single penny. No, I'm not talking about dumpster diving, although that certainly isn't something I'd look down on anyone for. I mean, that stuff's just wasted anyway. I'm actually talking about food pantries. Before you turn your nose up at this, hear me out. I get the fact that you may think you don't need to go to a food pantry, or that you don't want to take food away from someone who might need it more than you do. I totally get that. I'm the same way. I've only ever gone to a food bank a few times, and it was when I truly needed to go. I've never wanted to take food out of someone else's mouth when I could afford to buy it myself. But then I found out something I didn't know before, and that is the fact that a lot of food banks actually throw away a ton of food because they can't get rid of it. That's right. Sometimes they actually have more food than they can give away, so it just gets thrown in the trash. This doesn't tend to happen with shelf-stable stuff like canned food or boxed food. It's mainly things like baked goods, milk, eggs, fresh produce. It gets donated, and then it goes bad before they can give it all away, so they just have to trash it. But if you talk to them, they might be willing to give all that excess to you for free. Now, not all food pantries are like that. Some of them don't get any fresh food donations. Some of them might be extremely busy and are able to get out all the fresh stuff they get. But there are actually some pantries around the country that do throw excess away on a regular basis, and it's a shame for all that food to get wasted. So don't think you're accepting charity in this case. You're just preventing waste, right? If you get a bunch of food you can't use right away, you can can it, dehydrate it, freeze it. Bread, for example, will last quite a while in the freezer. Many fruits and vegetables can be blanched and frozen. I freeze red grapes for my kids and myself, and they get a lot sweeter and actually taste a lot like a healthy popsicle. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that thumbs up button and consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more videos like this. Don't forget to ring that little notification bell so you don't miss a single upload. This is Tara, the Homestead Hopeful, saying stay prepared, stay safe, and stay hopeful.